And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called Tholos. This is a game in which you're building some ancient sculptures. It's definitely an abstract strategy game. 2 players, white versus black, like many of these type of games have, in which you're trying to control columns to score the most points. Here is how it plays. There are 2 players in this game, and you're going to be scoring points against each other, but you'll be using this to score points. And you are trying to get points by having control of a column. So let's say, for example, a column looks like this. There are 2 blacks, there are 1 white, and there are 2 grays in this column. So black controls the column. There are more blacks. So black would get 1 point for each of their colors. They get 3 points for your opponent's color. So this is 1, 2, plus 3 is 5. And then each neutral one subtracts 2, so 2 and 4. So this column is worth 1 point to black. Not great, but I mean, if they had gotten rid of one of those gray cubes and it was 3 of their own, then it'd be 1, 2, 3, plus 3, 6, minus 2, 4 points. That's a much better thing. I think the best you could do would be to have 3 of your own color and 2 of your opponents, because that's a whopping 7 points. Now, how do you do this? So on your turn, each player has one of these little boards. This is your reserve. And you have 2 different actions. One of the actions can be filling up your reserve. So you can take 3 of your own and fill it up because you have a maximum of 3. You probably wouldn't want to do that in turn 1 because you just get 1. You can take 2 neutrals, or you can take one of your opponent's colors. The other thing you can do on your turn is you can just play a stone from here onto one of these spots on the board, onto the top spot of a column. So that's pretty much it. But if you play your own color, so if I'm white and I put my own color here, you get to take the bonus action on these. So each of these has a different bonus action. For example, when you play on one of these, you can move a color. This lets you move a black, this lets you move a neutral, this lets you move a white from the top of one tower to another. This one lets you throw one back in the supply. This lets you put another one on top of a tower from your board here. This lets you move one from your opponent's board to your board, and this lets you take one from the supply and put it here. Again, these don't activate unless you play your own color. So that's basically the game. Now there is an advanced version of the game where each person has a decoration that they have, where you will be placing these decorations at the beginning of the game. You'll be putting them on the board here, and that will give you a special ability for that section. So for example here, these ornament tiles, they're called, in this column, the gray stones are worth +2 instead of -2, if this one's out there. The one I put out there, this column holds 7 stones instead of 5, because they usually max out at 5. So that's kind of an advanced way to play, and you can play with 1 or more of these ornaments on each spot. The game's going to end when all the columns have 5. At that point, you bring out the scoring board, you score points, and whoever has the most is the winner. Okay, so in the components here, I mean, it's just basically black, white, and gray stones. Not problematic. The different sides here, I will say that I don't know, these are not particularly complex. You'll learn them pretty quickly, but I didn't find it to, sometimes, I don't know, everything kind of blurs together on the board. It looks a little bit like, even this is like, ooh, look at that cool thing. Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's just these symbols here. It's very Spartan of sorts here. With all the different, just the different blocks, and there's not a lot of components. It's nice that you put this thing on the back of the box. When you put that there, it does kind of present like a little temple of sorts. But yeah, the components for this are fine. The rule book, it worked. It explains everything. It's easy to explain. Okay, so in this particular game, it's kind of area control, but it's kind of a funky area control, because you want your opponent's pieces to be in your towers because they give you 3 points. It's pretty awesome, but you don't want there to be more than 2, and you only want there to be 2 if you have 3. So there's this back and forth. You put out the things, and I'll tell you what, folks, this is definitely an esoteric game in the sense that when you first play it, you're going to be like, how exactly does this work? In fact, once you play that base game, I think you should never play it again. The advanced game gives you a few areas where you're like, ooh, in this area, something's different. There's a different rule in this area, and it just makes the game a little bit more interesting. But trying to have the most. So do you put out your own pieces, or do you put out your opponents? The more of your opponents you put out, you control where they go. I might be like, oh, there's 2 grays there, and you just put 3 whites there on your turn. So you get 3 points, but you lose 4, so that whole thing's a -1, and meanwhile I'm controlling other things that give me points. It just isn't particularly engaging past that point. This is the kind of abstract strategy game where I played it and I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting game. And then I was done. Like, I didn't want to play much more beyond that. I was like, meh, I've seen a lot of this. There's not a lot more involved in the game. And, because you're doing area control. And I guess the ornaments and stuff will break it up a little bit. But not so that, I feel already that in a year, 5 years, when I come back and look at this, I'll struggle to remember exactly how the game played. I don't think the rule set's particularly difficult, although the pulling of the different pieces from the quarry and then putting them out is very similar to the other games I've seen at, where you're collecting resources and then putting them out on the board. And I think that maybe I would want a little bit more of a game. Taking things and then placing one and then taking a bonus action. It works okay, but I can't really recommend it much more beyond that. Might be interesting to you, though, so definitely, if you just saw the overview and think that it looks good, check it out. That's Tholos. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment, it's fun a few times.